This week at the movies, we're going to light up the sky like a flame.
Actually, we'll just review the remake of the movie Fame. Also coming up this week, will Michael Moore give you your money's worth with Capitalism, a love story?
I got more bags. 10 billion probably won't fit in here. We want our money back.
I left my other boy when he was 6 to be with Katie. We need to spend some time together.
Plus, Clive Owen comes to terms with tragedy in The Boys Are Back.
We don't care about your headshot, or your dress size, or your dreams of being in OK Magazine, on talk shows, on the red carpet. Here, you will come to understand what being a performing artist really means.
I'm A.O. Scott of the New York Times.
And I'm Michael Phillips of the Chicago Tribune. These days, everything in our self-celebritizing culture ensures that we can all live forever and sing the body electric every second on YouTube or via Twitter updates or whatever. So it was inevitable. We were going to get that remake of Fame no matter what. We're back for another 4-year stint at the New York City High School of Performing Arts. The new squeaky cleaner Fame follows the tracks laid by the 1980 Alan Parker movie. The faculty includes such familiar faces as Kelsey Grammer, Megan Mullally, and B.B. Newirth, but the movie more or less belongs to Naturi Naughton as the classical pianist whose father doesn't want her slumming with that modern music, but she's got to follow her dream. The Fame remake isn't going for a commercial yet edgy the way the old R-rated Fame did. It's simply trying to give the high school musical generation an easygoing PG-rated extension course. And you know what? I actually liked a lot of this movie, hacky as the technique is, because its spirit is easygoing. And is it going to live forever? No. Still, I say, Tony, mildly, I say see it.
The spirit is easygoing, but the whole point of this movie is that if you're going to make it in the world of entertainment, in the world of the arts, you can't have an easygoing spirit. You have to be driven, you have to be disciplined, you have to know your craft.
Follow the dream.
You have to work like hell.
Yeah.
And the fact is that this movie doesn't. It's lazy, it's sloppy, the drama is a disaster. The stories that are threaded through these 4 years of high school are just beyond ridiculous. Some of these scenes wouldn't even pass the audition to get into the school.
Okay, hold on. I think the reason I swung with this particular cheese ball, Tony, is that I just have a genetic code that's predisposed to liking these kind of showbiz cornball, you know, mythology stories.
I don't mind the cornball and I don't mind the cliches, but I just think that the thing has to be executed a little better than this. Even some of the music and dance numbers, yes, the cafeteria sequence is great, but then there's like this Halloween dance number, which is like some kind of grotesque rave party.
Yeah, okay, not the strongest scene. The finale doesn't really work either, but look, you yourself...
But you like this movie.
No, I did. There's something about... I think it's got an easygoing spirit, and I just sort of... you liked Step Up to the Streets,
Step Up to the Streets.
As did I.
Yeah, but that was so much more fun. That just had so much more spirit and craziness to it. And I will say, Naturi Naughton is good, Kay Panabaker in one of the other roles of the kids is good, and it's always nice to see Frasier and Lilith together again. But I cannot recommend this movie. This movie is weak. You should skip it. Next movie, Brief Interviews with Hideous Men. That's not the name of the new talk show Michael and I are starting up. It's the first film directed by John Krasinski, the actor best known for his work on The Office. The movie is adapted from some stories by David Foster Wallace, who died last year, and whose work was cerebral, self-referential, short on plot, and long on thorny, difficult ideas.
I don't think the truth about men can be found in a book. Hey.
How you doing?
I want to set up interviews. I want to get primary research. I want to hear it.
Julianne Nicholson plays a graduate student whose research project overlaps with her personal life. She interviews a bunch of guys and discovers what a lot of women already know, that we are insecure, dishonest, manipulative, and vain, but each in our own special way.
I know I should have told you some of all this about me sooner, before you moved all the way out here, which, believe me, meant so. It made me feel you really cared about this, especially because you're moving out here was something I lobbied so hard for. School.
This movie is extremely talky, and not everyone in the large cast quite manages to make Wallace's hyper-self-aware prose sound like actual human speech. I think Krasinski has maybe proved that this writer's work can't be filmed. And even though this experiment doesn't quite succeed, there's enough intelligence and insight in this movie to make it worth the attempt and to make the movie worth renting.
No, I don't think so, Tony. If Krasinski has proven that this work can't be filmed, it doesn't feel like a success to me, even on a rented level. Because
well, that's a perfect David Foster Wallace paradox right there.
Yeah, but okay, this film, I worry that this film is static enough and stiff enough that it's going to keep people away from discovering David Foster Wallace if they haven't read him. I just don't think it finds its life as a piece of cinema, because it's just the wrong way to adapt any writer you love is to be slavishly faithful to the letter of the original, and I just don't feel like this one has its own juice.
Well,
you know?
I feel like it draws a lot of the insight and the comedy and the humor and the sharp edges of irony out of the book and tries to put it into the world, and it's intermittently successful. I mean, there are a lot of different episodes and a lot of different guys. Some of them don't work at all. Some of them I think work very, very well.
Yeah, wouldn't blame the cast. Wouldn't blame the cast. I think Krasinski has a couple of good visual ideas, but
I think he has some potential as a filmmaker.
Yeah, we'll see. For me, skip it. Coming up next, who doesn't like our economic system very much? Michael Moore, that's who. We review Capitalism, a Love Story.
And later, another international sex symbol, Clive Owen, shows us his softer side in The Boys Are Back.
It seems to work for us.
We're here to get the money back for the American people.
I understand, sir, but you can't come in there.
Can you just take the bag, take it up there,
Absolutely not.
fill it up?
Michael Moore has taken on the gun culture, the Bush administration, the head of General Motors, and the healthcare industry, and now he's waging war on an entire economic system. Capitalism, a Love Story finds the man from Flint, Michigan, trying to make sense of the current global downturn, predatory lenders, privatized detention centers, and much, much more. And 20 years after Roger and Me, Moore's still trying to take meetings with corporate spokespeople whose best interests do not involve talking to this man.
No, sir.
You know, I've been doing this for like 20 years,
I understand,
and
sir.
I have not been let into this building for 20 years.
47 to 76 Bravo or Alpha. Good. It's Michael Moore here to see the chairman.
Here, Moore, in his trademark ironic sing-song voiceover, explains the housing bubble in a few easy steps.
First, tell these homeowners that they own a bank, and that bank is your home. So if your home is worth $250,000, that makes you a $250,000, and you can use your bank to get more money. Just refinance. Everyone's doing it.
About a third, maybe a half of this film is sharp and provocative viewing. The rest, I'm afraid, feels familiar and not really good familiar. Some of Moore's tactics, to me, have taken on a weary air. Again with the security guard harassments, again with the tear-stained close-ups, backed by melodramatic music. Still, for the good stuff and for the necessary mixed blessing that is Michael Moore, I say rent it.
Rent it?
Yes.
Rent it?
Yes.
When? Rent it after the revolution? Rent it after your house has been foreclosed and your DVD
I do not
player
disagree with the
has been
message
taken
of this
away?
film, Tony.
I'm not sure if I agree or disagree with the message of this film, but I think it's an extremely timely and urgent movie. I feel like Michael Moore has been waiting 20 years to make this film. But now, because of the economic situation, I feel like there is a time and a place in the culture. People are ready for this movie, and I think that he's stepped up. I think that he's taken a lot of different developments and synthesized
a lot. But blobby, I think this film is blobby, and I don't think it's as effective as his previous film, Sicko. I think that film was very kind of tightly wound around one big idea, and this film is sort of loosely wound around, I don't know, 5 or 7 of them.
I think it puts it together actually into a fairly coherent picture. Now, granted, there are always moments in a Michael Moore movie where you roll your eyes and you say, there's Michael Moore again. He's doing it again. That's his signature as a film.
We're talking about
as a filmmaker.
Like, for example, when he takes crime scene tape and across the New York Stock Exchange front door.
But I think that in some of his previous movies, which I don't like as much, like Bowling for Columbine, I felt like he was sort of groping and reaching for different ideas.
Yeah.
This one, I think, really does come together, and I think that it's a really urgent and powerful and interesting movie.
I'd say it comes together in scenes like where we get to actually find out why this juvenile detention center in Pennsylvania, which was privately run, and it was all this bizarre mixture of legal and corporate interests working together, and that was a good example of capitalism run amok. That's the kind of thing, 10 minutes, that I wish more of this film had.
I think it brings a lot of those contemporary stories together in a very interesting and provocative historical context. And I think Capitalism, a Love Story raises questions about about our system, its future, its ethics, that are very, very important. And even if you don't agree with the answers that Michael Moore suggests, I think you should see this movie. And coming up next, Clive Owen stars as a single father who can't say no in The Boys Are Back. Plus, Audrey Tautou plays one of the most influential women in fashion in Coco before Chanel.
And on next week's show, Ricky Gervais and Jennifer Garner bend the truth in The Invention of Lying. Plus, we go for a spin with Ellen Page and Drew Barrymore in Whip It.
Artie! In fact, really, there's only one rule, and that is you got to do as I tell you. It's just that I'm not going to tell you to do very much. The aim is something we like to call hog heaven.
Okay.
Here's a pop quiz for all you aspiring screenwriters out there. What's the surest way to guarantee audience sympathy for a male protagonist? It's a no-brainer. Kill his wife. Add kids and the heartstrings just pull themselves. They certainly get quite a yanking in The Boys Are Back, a new melodrama from Australian director Scott Hicks, with Clive Owen as a sports writer named Joe War.
You look great.
There was a bat in your voice.
No?
Then tell me you like this dress.
That dress is fantastic.
Thank you.
My God, you're beautiful.
What is it?
Katie?
When Joe's wife dies of cancer, he's left in charge of their adorable young son, Artie. And the two are soon joined by Harry, Joe's teenage son from a previous marriage. These guys call their house Hog Heaven. And Joe's parenting philosophy is summed up in 3 words spelled out on his fridge. Just say yes.
Yes.
This movie's based on a true story, a touching and funny memoir by Simon Carr. But in adapting it for the screen, the filmmakers have loaded up on sentimentality, predictability, and more than a little unacknowledged misogyny. The Boys Are Back might as well have been called No Girls Allowed. Clive Owen is a charming fellow, but this one's a dud. Skip it.
Yeah, I'm with you on this, Tony. I mean, I think there's a real whiff of self-congratulation over every beat of this picture. And every time you get a scene where Clive Owen is in his just say yes philosophy, kind of letting his kids basically do what they want, like hang off the hood of the car while they drive, 40 miles an hour on the beach, or even letting the son drive on a dark road at night. You don't think so much, hey, what a wacky free spirit. You just think, what a fatally irresponsible guy this guy could be.
That makes you one of the uptight moms that populate this movie. Except for the dead one. All of the women in this movie are just these sort of controlling, disapproving, uptight. His mother-in-law, the mother of his friend's young son, his ex-wife, everyone is just sort of looking at him saying, you can't do that.
Right.
And his message is, I can do whatever I want. I'm the world's greatest
and I think maybe a different director could have brought in some truth or some sense of real life as it's lived, and it's complicated life. But, Tony, this director, Scott Hicks, made Shine about a decade ago, introduced an American audience to Jeffrey Rush in a very good performance.
Very overrated movie, I think.
Yeah, it's much better than this one, though.
Fair enough.
I don't think there's a minute of truth in this thing. I say skip it. You get a very heavily perfumed version of fashion designer Coco Chanel's life in the film Coco Before Chanel. It stars Audrey Tautou and begins in 1895 when Gabrielle, later nicknamed Coco, is dumped into an orphanage by her father. Years later, she and her sister are singing in saloons, and in one of these dives, she meets her future paramour.
Ça vous arrive parfois de dire des choses sympathiques? Hein? Vous pouvez pas essayer de dire quelque chose de gentil?
Je parle quand j'ai quelque chose à dire.
Les petits yeux noirs, hein?
Coco moves in with this wealthy aristocrat, but finds true love with one of his business associates, played by Alessandro Nivola. Here, on holiday, they check out the seaside swells.
La vue est tellement serrée qu'elle va se couper en deux. Regarde-les avec leur meringue sur la tête. J'ai l'impression d'être dans une pâtisserie.
Good eye for fashion, no? I wish writer-director Anne Fontaine had as good an eye for drama. Coco Chanel was a lot more complicated than you'd guess from this thin slice of over-decorated cake. Tattoo's up to the challenge, as are her fellow performers, and the movie is painless, but I think biopics should be held to a higher standard than simply a lack of pain. So I say skip it.
Well, I think Audrey Tautou is terrific in this movie, showing a great deal of intensity and sharpness. I think also Benoit Poulvord, who is the actor who plays her first lover,
very good,
very good, would be a household name if anyone could pronounce his name. But I think this movie, I didn't really see it as a biopic, I guess. I saw it more as a movie about sexual mores and class relations in early 20th century France. And in that way, almost like a Theodore Dreiser novel. I thought it was just really interesting about how an independent, ambitious woman who comes from nothing finds her way in the world by attaching herself to and then detaching herself from these men.
To me, it was a good performance, just sort of walking in and out of a series of postcards. Look, I didn't really even particularly like La Vie en Rose, the Edith Piaf biography from a couple of years ago, but that film had a 15-minute sequence near the end where she discovers that her lover has died in a plane crash, where everything, you feel everything that's going on with this complicated personality's life, which is falling apart. I never felt that. I never got that kind of juice.
I did not like La Vie en Rose at all. I thought it was completely. See, that is a kind of standard issue biopic. This movie, I think, is doing something in a way less ambitious, but I think much more interesting. I don't think it's a great movie, but I think it's quite a good one. Very smart. Really knows what it's about. Understands its character. So I say you should see it. Coming up next, it's been a year since Paul Newman died, and we remember one of our most beloved actors in our DVD Out Now segment.
No, this is my table, man. I own it. 13 ball.
Now it's time for the DVD Out Now segment. You think of Paul Newman, who died a year ago, and what comes to mind? Probably the blue eyes and the smile, but those things could blind moviegoers sometimes to just how good an actor Newman really was. Fox has issued a 17-disc boxed set called Paul Newman, The Tribute Collection. There's plenty here worth revisiting, including one of my favorite Newman portrayals, Fast Eddie Felsen in director Robert Rosson's 1961 classic, The Hustler. Newman squared off against Jackie Gleason's Minnesota Fats and George C. Scott's Vicious Gambler. Check out this Newman scene with Piper Laurie. Here, Fast Eddie's arrogance is tempered by an insecurity that revealed a movie star who was developing very quickly into one hell of an actor.
I could have beat that guy. I could have beat him cold. You never would have known. But I just had to show him. Just had to show those creeps and those punks what the game is like when it's great, when it's really great.
He's so good in that scene. And Tony, if there is a more charismatic portrait of an upstart who learns a little humility the hard way, I want you to show it to me.
Well, that's definitely the great performance, I think, of the early part of Newman's career. I mean, the young Paul Newman, of course, was one of the most beautiful screen actors of his time. But he really came into his own as an actor when he started to get old and grizzled. At least that's what I've always thought. He was still good looking, but he was rougher, sadder, a little more knocked around. For me, the greatest of these later performances, one of many that should have gotten him that long-delayed Oscar, is in The Verdict, a tough, pungent courtroom thriller directed by Sidney Lumet. In this movie, Newman plays Frank Galvin, an Irish Catholic Boston lawyer whose early promise has been pickled in booze and disappointment. Frank stumbles into one last chance, a medical malpractice case that pits him against both the church and the blue blood establishment. Thanks to Newman's performance and Lumet's gritty direction, you believe every minute.
I noticed you left David Mamet's screenplay out of this because Mamet's your favorite punching bag, as we learned from an earlier
Well,
show.
Mamet is a much better screenwriter than he is a playwright or director.
Agreed.
But we're here to talk about Paul Newman.
The only thing I wouldn't have done is devote 2 of the 17 discs in this box set to The Towering Inferno, because that's not exactly Newman's best hour as either an actor or a movie star.
No, that's true, and it is odd to see, but interesting to see Robert Altman's Quintet, one of the most puzzling movies ever put on film.
But Newman is such a pleasure to watch. So, Paul Newman, The Tribute Collection, is available right now.
And Michael and I have a lot more to say about Paul Newman. Go to our website at themoviestv.com and click on Web Exclusives.
Coming up next, want to know what you can't miss this weekend? Stay tuned for my 3 to See.
That's not a business meeting, it's a crime scene.
Closed captioning for At the Movies is sponsored by Hotel provided by Park Hyatt Chicago, Chicago's award-winning hotel and luxury dining experience, located in the heart of Chicago's Magnificent Mile on Water Tower Square.
Okay, now it's time for my 3 to See. Number 3. Big Fan, featuring Patton Oswalt as an over-dedicated New York Giants fan. This one's an example of the comedy of squirm, and Oswalt revels in the chance to make us do exactly that. Number 2, the September issue, a juicy documentary on a subject that didn't hold particular interest for me going in. Editor Anna Winter and what went into the making of the monster September issue of Vogue a couple of years back, when the economy was quite a different matter. And number 1, The Informant, another one from the squirm genre, but it's a very crafty comedy based on fact about a corporate whistleblower played by Matt Damon who is not quite what he seems.
That's it for now. Remember, we're always online. Just go to atthemoviestv.com.
And we'll leave you with a recap of this week's show. Join us next week for reviews of The Invention of Lying with Ricky Gervais, Jennifer Garner, and Tina Fey, plus Whip It with Ellen Page and Drew Barrymore. And until then, we'll be at the movies.